Welcome to Back to My Garden. Discover your passion for gardening. Here's Dave Ledoux.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world when you listen to this. I'm Dave Ledoux, and welcome to another episode of Back to My Garden. And today we have a great guest, folks. We're going to Kentucky. Pamela loves the simplicity of gardening, the therapeutic nature of it, the outdoors, and the tranquility brings her joy. She's a master gardener, a designer, and a creator of amazing spaces. We have a lot to discuss. Joining us from Kentucky, please welcome Pamela Anthony. Hi, Pamela.
Hello. Greetings from the farm here in Kentucky.
I'm excited that you're here.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm excited as well.
I gave you a brief introduction, and I want to get to know you better. And our listeners want to hear your stories. So take a minute or two, relax, get into the flow. Share with us a little bit about your background and how did you get into gardening?
Okay, well, I have been in serious gardening business since 1995, starting out in the herb business. I actually grew herbs and supplied them through mail order. And then opening a couple of garden centers but as far as going way back, I've always had a passion to be among flowers and in the garden. As a young child, I always was at my mother's footsteps through the hills and streams at my old home place, looking for blooming life. And I've always been in the presence of a hardworking true gardener at heart, which was her. She always brought me to love what nature has to offer.
Outstanding. For those of you driving in the car, sit back and relax. Pamela and I are going to talk about gardening for the next 25 minutes, and any notes, links, and resources will be shared at the blog at BackToMyGarden. I want to encourage you to follow Pamela on Twitter at Beehind-Thyme. Now let me spell it for you. It's BeeHindThyme. Very clever, Pamela.
Oh, thank you. Well, there's a story behind that. How I created the name was B-E-E. I love honeybees here at the farm. And then Hind, with the behind, is I also plunder in older pieces, farmhouse style tables and junk, especially for the garden. And then, of course, thyme, with it being the herb thyme. So that's how the name came about.
We have so many directions we could wander off in. You started in herbs,
yes.
20 years ago. I don't think herbs were as popular or as well known as they are now. You were kind of ahead of the times.
Yes, most definitely. Of course, always, growing up as a child, I was always exposed to herbs and flowers and numerous other plants. So that was something that I made my own teas and lots more in the aromatherapy area then. Cooked a lot with herbs. And I'm still today, as far as the herbs, more culinary, I guess you would say, that I grow them for here at the farm. But yes, they're just, something that's always, I've always loved and held close to my heart is herbs.
I love it. And you now have honeybees?
Well, actually, I don't right now. We are just put in an orchard, so we're going to hopefully be adding honeybees, whether it be from someone voluntarily bringing their hive here or me adventuring out into that, depending on time-wise, because I don't know, as far as time here at the farm is very crucial right now. There's a lot to do, so, but eventually, yes, for the orchard mainly.
Wow, you just don't wake up one day and say, I'm going to put in an orchard. That must have took some planning.
Yes, it did.
Apples or?
Apples. They're semi-dwarf apple trees.
Nice. What part of Kentucky are you, near Louisville?
I'm about an hour and 15 minutes from Louisville, Lexington, and Bowling Green. So I'm kind of like in the center there. Yeah. But yeah, it's a good area. I'm very pleased with it.
Coming down for the derbies on our bucket list. If we don't do it this year, it'll be next year.
Oh, that is just something that just, well, of course, being in Kentucky, it's hard not to get excited that, time of year, but it's just, the adrenaline is just unbelievable. And of course, in flowers, my thing is, with planting, I always use Derby weekend. And, that's what I tell all the customers, gardeners, when it's safe to plant in our zone, our area here. So, but yeah, it's something else, the Derby is.
What are you, zone 6?
Yes.
Yeah, you're a little bit... I'm right on the edge of Lake Erie, so I get a small lake effect microclimate, so I'm 5B. But I've got 4 feet of snow on the ground right now.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, that is... well, we had snow flurries, this morning, and the temperatures have dropped. But, it's winter. I guess that's something that we... can't help, we have to have that to kill out all the bad things. And even though, and everybody's getting antsy right now, to get in that fresh soil and planting. And, so.
Very good. And you have a lot of experience in garden centers. What was that like, running the businesses? It's a very trying, especially a garden center, because that is, and I still have one today, which is on a smaller scale. It is something that you can't walk away from. It's like you have a full-time baby, literally, because you've got, thousands of dollars tied up. And of course, you always want to grow the best quality and, product for your customers. So it's a very... not just labor-wise, but mentally, it can be draining at times, especially right now, making sure everything's on course, seeded at the right time. And, at the beginning of the season, that is crucial because, some folks think that, okay, there's certain ways to there's only one way to fill a pot, but that's not true, especially when you're seeding and plugging, because that's the life of that plant. And there's no soil pressing or anything like that because it does eventually kill the plant later in the season. So we have to really, really be careful at this time of year to have a really good growing season. It must be interesting. It's almost, how do I describe it? You know how like when little kids are in kindergarten and grade 1, if one kid gets sick, the whole, 20 other kids get sick?
Oh, yes.
Is it the same way with plants?
Yes, most definitely. That's something that, you have to stay on the top of your, game plan, not missing a day, for checking, especially for insect, aphids, anything like that can, especially during winter, because ventilation is less this time of year because we've got every hole, cranny packed to save all that heat, for germination. And it's very crucial right now. It's kind of like we're all holding our breath until, you cross that certain, I guess, time season, to where those ventilation fans and all that can start kicking back on because, it is, it's something that could really be damaging, not only for that short season, but, like now I'm ordering for fall and Christmas. So I'm getting plants in that will not be sowed till then. So, yeah, it's a very, it's different. And that's why I've kind of stepped back and kind of recalculated and focused on what my true passions are here for this plot of land because for one person, it's hard.
Oh, yeah. I love how gardeners have the concept of time. Like you're planning 8 months, 10 months, 12 months down the road. And people in big cities are planning, I got to get to work in the next hour. Then I got to survive to my break. Then I got to make lunch. Then I got to come home from work and cook dinner. It's a daily grind where gardeners think about time differently. Yes.
Yeah. The time and weather, that is something that, we are actually constantly looking at, especially the weather. And then, to be prepared. I mean, in October, I was ordering for what's coming in now. So it is, you really have to, stay on focus because it can be crucial to your whole year, your whole business, matter of fact. I don't order a whole lot of in. I do have some specialty plants, things that I do bring in. But the majority of things are grown here, all naturally, and and most of the plant seed bulbs are heirloom. So it's a little bit more of a specialty, I guess you'd say, growing. But I do have your regular flowers as well. But that's mostly and the herbs, of course, the rosemary. All the propagation, all that is done here, all the topiaries, everything is grown here.
You have the beginning here of a brand new year. Do you have a feeling for what's going to be popular or hot or trendy or in demand?
I think a lot of people, and this is just my outlook, my opinion, I think a lot of people, of course, plants and, herbs, flowering shrubs, a lot of people have always went toward the blossom, the color. I think that more people are leaning toward more looking at foliage because there is so many different plants now that, have a variation in foliage, whether they be variegated or, just slightly tinted with different colors. And some plants, there's a lot of plants that I actually pinch blossoms back, especially coluses, because I don't want them to blossom. I want more foliage and more lush and more healthy, because that just adds interest to, the other plants in the container or planter. And I think foliage, lots of green, foliage, as in boxwoods, topiaries, anything in the topiary field that can be made into one, I think is going to be really hot because the decor, people are pushing more towards simple, decorating, wanting to bring live plants in, and they like that more of a French, Paris, Tuscan twist, like a different country where they have lots of topiary and just lots of lush greenery. And I think that's going to be really big this year.
I'm nodding along. So the other night, I'm getting ready for bed, and my wife's on Pinterest. And she says, oh, look, we got to do this. And they're photos of boxwoods that the designer has grown almost like living pieces of Lego, so you can move the pots around with the sculpted boxwoods.
Uh-huh.
It was just amazing.
Oh, my goodness.
And she goes, oh, we got to do this. And I go, when? Like, how? And she, how ambitious gardeners can get. And I'm thinking, I want to grow hot peppers, and she wants to do designer boxwoods this year. So,
well, I mean, in Pinterest, of course, that's a whole different show, I'm sure. But, I mean, it's, and then that's what I was, as far as ideas, on Pinterest with the boxwoods, it's endless. And with boxwoods, you have, I mean, look, that's a foliage that stays green, all 12 months of the year, in most zones and they're lush and, hardy and slow growing. So there's not a lot of trimming unless you are doing topiaries into shapes such as Legos. Mm-hmm. But I think, of course, here on the farm, that is one of my top, I recommend over and over. And there's so many different varieties of boxwoods. I just, yeah. And then the hot peppers, that's something that I do. I love growing here as well, and the heirloom seed or hot pepper. So you could do both there.
Oh, yeah. Pamela, we have listeners from about 60 countries. Not everybody knows where Kentucky is. So if you're thinking of a map of North America, you're kind of like directly south of the Great Lakes, kind of
Yes.
in the middle. What kind of weather did you have? Because the news was kind of global about how bad the drought was in America last year. Were you spared that weather?
Yes. I do not recall as far as any change, even as far as just getting finished with taxes and things, I did not recognize any difference as far as our watering systems or anything like that. Everything stayed on schedule here on the farm, so that was very much of a blessing for us.
Oh yeah, I mean, places like Texas and Arizona and California were just dry as dust.
Oh yes, and I cannot imagine, a gardener's heart in those conditions. I mean, it would be very tough.
I have had conversations, though, with gardeners in those zones, and they kind of, almost like an awareness now of the value of water, so they're moving away from heavy color and all those annual plantings and now to more drought hardy and drought tolerant and natives and things like that.
Yes. And that's, I think I grow for a local university here, and that's what I lean toward because of the watering, because time is the essence to everyone now. And, just to make sure that, things and planters stay up to par there, leaning more toward plants that are less, maintenance, I guess you would say, as far as, the dry weather and things.
Last season, if you think about everything you were growing, did anything frustrate you, like refuse to grow or just annoyed you?
No. Looking back, of course, it was a regular growing season, and I'm not thinking of anything that in particular.
Okay. Let's flip that and say, what brought you real pleasure last year?
Probably the dahlias here that I plant. I grow for fresh cut, for floral designers. So I grow lots of dahlias and the giant heirloom zinnias here. So I guess those two really brought lots of pleasure. And there is one pepper that I'm going to mention that I was just overly joyed with. And it's called fish pepper. I don't know if you're familiar with that variety.
No, go on.
It is a very hot one, but the look of it, the colors is just unbelievable, and it's no bigger than your pinky. And one plant, oh my goodness, I was probably harvesting every other day, maybe 50 to 75 off of one plant. And it is phenomenal. Of course, any hot pepper, the drier, the better for them, because that's actually what gives them gets them to their hot part is, leaving the soil really dry. So they were just thriving. And, of course, I planted a whole row for market, and here I'm, you got a whole row of fish peppers, and you're harvesting a lot of peppers. Of course, you can, let them go, change colors and, to red. And of course, when they get to that point, I always dry them, for chili and stews and things like that. But that is one pepper that I highly recommend, for anyone, even if you're, you have small space, you can always do container gardening with that pepper. And the foliage is unbelievably variegated. It's got little white creamy veins that go through the green lush color. So that's a must to put on any list to grow this year.
Did you get that locally or order it online?
No, if you don't mind, I would love to give a shout out to the company is Baker's Creek Seed Company, or rareseed.com. They have it as well as many other seed. There was another one, Jimmy Nardello. I think that's the how you pronounce the last name. That was a very, very good pepper as well. It's not hot, but it was a very good eating grilled pepper.
Big fan of Baker Creek. Follow them on Twitter @RareSeeds. Anything I grow, I always send them photos, and they're really into Twitter and social media, and they always share it.
Oh, yeah, they have been. I mean, every social media site that I have, especially Instagram, because I love photography and I do a little bit of that on the side online, and it's called Green Grape. It's a tomato that they put out. Mm-hmm. And I have photos that are just unbelievable of that particular tomato. I used to grow for upper scale restaurants in Louisville and Lexington, and that was one of my top tomatoes. That is a must-have in a garden.
Is your Instagram the same as your Twitter, Beehind-Thyme?
It is Beehind-Thyme-Farm-Garden.
Okay. I'll put a link up on the site for that. I love Instagram.
Oh, I do too. That is I call it for some reason, my hiding place. I don't know why that I've given it that name, but it's like I just go there and I can just post. And, and there's lots of different countries that gardeners from different countries there that I just, you just get different ideas as far as what they have in their garden.
If you're in the high-end restaurant business, doesn't it just make sense to have the best possible quality ingredients, and you get the flavor from the heirlooms?
Oh, yes, most definitely. I could not imagine as far as having a restaurant that did not have, some of the best top quality, actually visiting that farm as a chef and seeing, the production and how they grow and, when each product is going to be available. I think that is just definitely the way to go as far as when you're offering, top of the line produce. And, with Baker's Creek, I mean, with their descriptions that they have with each vegetable, they will, actually tell you, this is very popular among chefs here or there, whether you're looking at Italian or Mexican foods. And so I grow about 21 different varieties of heirloom tomatoes each year, and I've, knock on wood, I've never had a downfall with any of their varieties.
It's truly remarkable how many, there's no reason to be bored, is there? There's so much to explore.
No, and if you are bored, just come to the farm.
Yeah.
Because there is very much more than I can tackle here. So
I just glanced at the clock, Pamela. Our time is flying by.
Okay.
Now is the time in the show where we play a game called 5 Quick Questions.
Okay.
This is your chance to share your wisdom and experience with novice beginner gardeners. Are you ready to play?
I'm ready to play.
All right, question number 1. What's the funniest, unusual, or wackiest mistake that you've ever made in the garden that you're willing to admit to in public?
Well, I am, and I'm sure there is many. I'm looking. It's actually not in the garden, and it's in kind of like a new little hobby or adventure I gotten into, I guess gardening or whatever, where you grow your own worm farming, I guess you would say. Mm-hmm. And actually really handling them the proper way. I had actually left them in the greenhouse through the winter and forgot them come spring. And needless to say, all hundreds of worms were, I guess, ended up as compost in the soil that they provided. And I guess that's one of the worst mistakes I've made in the gardening. And, it's a lesson that's been well learned, believe me. So I guess that's the worst thing that I've done.
Moment of silence on the podcast for the worms.
Exactly. Because it was, to me, it was devastating because, I had, once that greenhouse heats in the spring, some days 110 and what have you, it really, it was devastating for me. But, like I said, it was a lesson learned.
Very good. Question number 2. If you were only allowed to grow one plant next year, what plant would you just have to grow?
Nasturtiums.
Ooh.
That is by far and probably will always be, one of my old-fashioned, I call it my old-fashioned glory plant. And it just, not only does it just kind of like vividly takes you down memory lane of your childhood, whether it be your grandmother or your mother. But, it's easy care, low cost, whether you're purchasing the plants or seed. And it's just, the foliage is phenomenal as far as, it's almost like it touches all your five senses. And as well as, harvesting the peppery taste of those blossoms. That just, you just can't go wrong with nasturtiums.
I was going to ask you, do you eat them? But yeah, absolutely.
Yes. They have a really good peppery taste, and I sprinkle them on top of salads. And, very much so.
Nice. Question 3 is internet related. We've shared a couple of websites like Baker Creek Seeds. And do you have any favorite gardening websites that you can share?
Well, of course, BackToMyGarden. That, I have really been visiting you a lot in the last month or so. And there's another one that's called A Way to Garden by Margaret Roach. I think I think she is. And she also sends out, a newsletter, keeping you on, up to date on what to do this season or this month. Especially if you're a beginner gardener, and you're unsure of when to start these seeds or grow this, she can really get you started on the right track.
I love her stuff. She is what I would call a brilliant real gardener. I'm an enthusiastic amateur.
Okay. Well, she has very much, her layout, her, the preciseness of her webpage, everything. That's who I want to be when I grow up. I mean, because she is right on it, nice. And very much so. She, I think that she would work well with the beginner gardener and, master gardeners all the way up to, I think we all as gardeners are learning every day. So.
On an aside, you're a master gardener. Do your friends and family treat you almost like a doctor when you're around, like ask you for free advice?
Oh, yes. I get that daily from friends, family, folks online, are constantly sending, emails or messaging. And I just give my knowledge is learned from trial and error and from the wisdom that my mother handed down to me. So I just give my opinion, my way of growing, and hope that it helps. But yeah, I get that a lot.
Nice. Question 4 is, do you have a favorite gardening book?
It would have to be The Heirloom Life Gardener by Jess and Emily Gettle. I think that is right. You can order it through Baker Creek as well. And I think the authors are actually affiliated with Baker Creek. Nice. So that is, and it's got the most beautiful cover on it as well. And you can tell that I'm in decor, a nice coffee table book. Nice. Because it's just, the cover is just beautiful.
Very good. Question 5. No right or wrong answer. It's, is there anything you've never grown that you would love a chance to experiment with?
Peanuts.
Seriously?
Yes. That is something that I've always, and every year, I think, okay, I'm going to fit that in. And as of yet, I have not done that. That and cotton are the two things that I would like to grow. I actually don't even have it on my list for this year. But yes, that is something that I, would like to add to the garden here.
I'm sure I could walk by a peanut plant and not have a clue what it is.
Yes. Well, me as well. But I've heard in the zone that I live in here, in Zone 6 that, you can really, reap a good harvest from them. So that is, and I love roasted peanuts. So, that's something to...
Fun experiment, yeah.
Yes.
Well, dear listeners, reach out and follow Pamela on Twitter at Beehind-Thyme, BeehindThyme, and check out her feed on Instagram. It's Behind-Thyme Farm?
Yes, Beehind-Thyme-Farm-Garden.
Garden.
Uh-huh.
I'll have to share that link. That'll be cool. Yep, gardeners love photography.
Oh, yes. And then on Facebook, I do lots on my business page. Actually, I just had listed some... I dry a lot of my flowers here on the farm. I preserve them in a silica gel, so I've got those coming up. The seed I'm actually packaging, and they'll be offered in the next week or so. To get the garden, going, so you would, can go ahead and make plans for those zinnias. And you can follow me on Facebook at Beehind-Thyme-Farm and Garden. And just if anybody's, just let me know that you're there. I love, the feedback from social media.
Outstanding. I'll have all those links up on the blog. Pamela, you've been a brilliant guest. We're almost out of time.
Well, thank you so much, Dave.
I want you to speak to the listeners all over the world. Can you leave them, all these gardeners listening, with a note of encouragement or a pearl of wisdom?
With the gardening, of course, growing up as a child, I didn't know anything other than that being a pastime for me at the, hem of my mother's apron. And, with our world, the way that things, all the bad news and the drama and the trauma, gardening can bring light to your everyday living, whether it be, herbs on the windowsill or, planting seed with your children. If you don't have the space, doing container gardening, there's so many different ways and ideas that you could find on Pinterest to do that. And, don't let, the intimidating, photos, just like I was just mentioning, oh my goodness, how did she grow that, or how could I do that? We all have had trials and errors, and just to give gardening a try, just to let, it into your life, and, to show your children that way, the gardening can be carried on, generation after generation. And if you can, learn the old ways and the old styles of gardening, you would appreciate it a lot more, and just be a little bit more relaxed and laid back, and, just enjoy.
Brilliant. Thanks for being on the show.
Well, thank you so much, Dave.